Okay, right off the rip. I was not prepared for this at all. Everquest, a legendary MMORPG that upon its initial release in March of 1999, went on to become one of the most successful and genre-defining titles ever released, marching on even till this day with currently a total of 29 expansions during its now over 20-year lifespan, with the most recent content expansion being December of 2022. With such a long lifespan and no end in sight for the game's updates, today we dive into its polygonal plains to see what it has to offer players today, exploring its lands, meeting its inhabitants, and taking on its challenges. The music with that zombie's head. With the latter being an experience I don't think I will ever forget. My name's MitchManix, and this is Everquest, being utterly hardcore. Before we begin, I would like to give a massive thank you to the sponsor of this video, AMD, who have recently partnered with the upcoming RPG epic, Starfield, to beam down a package that would unlock the full potential of this highly anticipated title. AMD are providing their customers with a free copy of Starfield to go along with the purchase of a range of their Ryzen 7000 series CPUs, as well as their Ryzen 6000 and 7000 series GPUs, to make sure you're ready to take on the stars with the latest and greatest PC hardware, with Starfield being specifically optimized for running on AMD. Head to the link in the description to find a participating retailer near you to grab yourself some of the best PC hardware on the market, and get with it one of this year's most exciting RPG experiences to prepare for Starfield. With on the CPU side no preparation being more ironclad than with AMD's Ryzen 9 7950X3D. A powerhouse of performance for both gaming and workloads, with it today being the fastest gaming CPU on the market, with up to 16 cores and boost clocks up to 5.7 GHz. So whether you're carving a path through the galaxy or creating content about your adventures, AMD's 7950X3D is the ultimate upgrade to your gaming arsenal. And a huge thank you to AMD for sponsoring this adventure. As always, our journey begins at the character creator, and after choosing our first server of Oakwind, a progression server, with the servers being something we'll cover a little bit later in the video. It's nice to see that Everquest sports a wide variety of 16 classes and races to craft your chosen hero, ranging from the vanilla human warrior that is, even with his tiny arms, a little bit too happy to see me, a mage wielding the raw power of the five head, or more exotic offerings such as a frogman or a troll that looks like he's just peed on the carpet. But we need a hero for this epic journey, so must of course call upon the one and only Bonker. An ogre that after being brought into this world was quickly named due to his behavior. Either that or the parents ran out of space on the form to include the S. Taking our first steps into the game's world, we get accustomed to the ogre starting zone. Checking in with the Guildmaster, we get a chance to boost some initial stats, making sure of course to include Bonker's lifelong love of pottery, also known as Smashy Smashy Vase Time. Following this, the Guildmaster tells us to return when we are stronger, so it's out into the world to begin working our way through the levels, and getting a better look at the ogre starting settlement, featuring some rather disturbing looking vendors, such as an ogre who has amazingly managed to make an entire bib of chest hair, as well as the town's smithing supplies vendor. Thank the ogre gods, this woman does not sell food. So we set off, gleefully striding towards the way out to the open world, blissfully unaware of the gauntlet that was about to unfold. Now in Ferroot Forest, Bonker quickly set about taking on some of the land's foes, and after wandering through the forest we happen upon our first victim, and get a quick reminder of Everquest being such a classic MMO, of course not following a lot of the typical setups found in more recent titles, trying out all manner of button combinations before finally beginning bonking on the lizardman, who wastes no time in smacking poor Bonker around, leading to him face-planting into the floor and having to shuffle off back to where he came to rethink his strategy. After reassessing the situation, we start to uncover some of Everquest's nuances with its combat. Targeting an enemy, the player can hit a key to consider them, showing their temperament and level, with the auto-attack system required from our warrior to begin wailing on the land's inhabitants, that at first glance seem to be both formidable as well as rather slippery. With a renewed sense of confidence, Bonker once again set off into the woods, looking rather disturbing for a number of reasons, to work on taking out some enemies within his level range, gearing up with what he could, and living up to his namesake, bonking into all manner of obstacles when tactical retreating after biting off a little more than he could chew. Smooth, Bonker. Smooth. A situation that occurred quite frequently even in these opening levels. MMORPG players of today will have become quite accustomed to games grouping enemies of a particular level range nicely into groups and zones to assist in early game leveling, something that Everquest has no desire for, mixing in mobs of a range of levels, wandering around just looking for an excuse to slap poor Bonker around, including what would become our ogre hero's nemesis, the roaming bears of the jungle. But even after receiving a couple of nice bits of gear from a friendly player, turning Bonker into a tribal-inspired tea cozy, time after time show up to batter Bonker to death when simply trying to get some initial levels.
Oh god.
We good?
We're not good. Bare necessities, my ass.
Life out in the jungle was hard, getting between 0.8 and 3% experience for each kill. That sometimes took a huge amount of wandering around and searching just to find something within our level range that wouldn't destroy us, turning the zone into a cutthroat experience crawling through the early levels, with death around every corner due to an aggro range as long as Bonker's monobrow, and never quite knowing what might wander past when taking the first swing. Well, for once I don't have the stupidest name in the zone. God bless you, Farthammer. Stopping off with the trainer every now and again to desperately spend some points into a skill, and see if any more have unlocked. Everquest handles skills similarly to how classic World of Warcraft would later adopt them, with incremental points added to the skill whenever it's used enough, as well as having the option to spend points granted after leveling. But alas, our warrior only being left with his bonker kick, unlike his bandaging skills were seemingly so low that they were more for decoration than anything else. Grinding away with a couple of % experience at a time, Bonker, although spending an age, was gradually working through the levels, the level up sound becoming a joyful musical flourish after hours of grinding over its scuffed dropping a lead pipe down a lift shaft reality. Whilst of course continuing to deal with our dreaded foe, the bears.
Gotcha, bitch! Not again!
Upon looking into a number of sources, the recommended level to leave this zone was around level 8, so still some more ways to go. Hours and hours went by. Countless deaths were delivered on both sides. Snakes, bats, and spiders endlessly kicked in the face, and Bonker beginning to feel like he was going mad when we finally hit level 6, only to see we had a notification pop up receiving some mail. Congratulations. Welcome to level 6. From here on out you will lose a small fraction of your experience whenever you die.
Oh, what a welcome. Oh, God!
Bonker had had enough and vowed he would reach level 8 and finally escape this jungle hell. And despite teleporting zombies,
Oh, what?
getting trolled by skeletons,
Oh, for God's sake!
and a hefty amount of tactical retreating,
Help me, my ogre brethren!
we finally made it to level 8. In the lightning fast time of just under, wait for it, 13 hours. 13 grilling hours just to get to level 8 in the same part of the same zone with the same bird sounds playing over and over. But of course not forgetting to celebrate properly by finally kicking the crap out of those bloody bears.
Haha, who's laughing now? You silly little tit.
At last the chance to venture further was upon us, and upon seeing yet more familiar-looking forest, made the decision after looking into alternatives to travel all the way across to the Common Lands. As you would imagine for a game that's had such a long lifespan, as well as 29 expansions, Everquest sports a mind-blowing amount of alternative zones and locations within its world, and we had most definitely had our time in the jungle. So set off across the lands towards the more multicultural Common Lands, whilst on the way getting a glance at some of the other zones, and of course still getting chased down by the odd ball bag looking for a fight. Making it to the Common Lands tunnel, we bound to the location so we could spawn back here when we inevitably died once again, and headed out into this new location to seek out more experience, and a chance to reach the higher levels within the Common Lands, only to be met once again with a now even more punctuated grind to level 9, taking 5 hours for one level, with only the odd bit of well-timed battle music to keep our spirits up. Even trying to visit a nearby town to buy and sell some gear, Bonker ended up getting chased out, most likely due to him simply being an ogre, while of course managing to bonk into the only tree in the zone on the escape. The white flag was up. Bonker could not go on flailing around with his two abilities for hours on end, trying to duck and dive the frequently confusingly placed mobs to obtain a single level. But luckily we had an ace up our sleeve, an ability to summon a legend that was a veteran of this unforgiving game, and just like so many of my American cousins, was ready with open arms to assist in uncovering its offerings. Getting a chance to team up with the one and only Redbeard Flynn, who along with being an outstanding MMO content creator, has been playing the game since the year 2000, meeting up in the Commonlands tunnel, and initially mistaking him for a box. We set up to experience what some longer standing players of the game watching this will most likely have been screaming at their computer monitor, that of course being grouping up in Everquest. Everquest, unlike the more contemporary direction, has a huge focus on teaming up to take on the game's content, with XP boosts being applied for a full team, and player buffs that can be granted by others having a huge impact on combat effectiveness, and with that experience gain when out in the world, which goes a long way especially when grouping with a bungling idiot like me.
If we go down there, we might die. We actually probably will definitely die, but...
Fucking hell.
I was just, as I was saying that, we will probably definitely die, and then I see you just disappear.
Teaming up also gave us a chance to get a look at a number of the game's dungeon instances, some clearly not designed for a bunker-sized adventurer, but with so many placed around the land made for a great break from grinding, jumping in to take on its challenges, or as I've experienced with EverQuest, running away from them.
Oh god.
Keep running, keep running, keep running.
Jesus Christ.
Teaming up really helped inject some much needed variety into the leveling process, and even all these years on there was a huge amount of players on this progression server, given the nature of progression servers which offer time-locked progression through the game's many expansions, and with this server Oakwind only opening at the end of May of this year. There was still frankly a mind-blowing population even inhabiting the game's lower-level zones, but the progression servers are not the only option for those looking to dive into this MMO today, as the game of course still has its standard live servers that just after jumping in with the illustrious Domington got an introduction much more crafted to new players, featuring a tutorial zone to walk through the game's controls and a much swifter leveling to around level 10 in about 3 or 4 hours, as well as some of the mechanics we had yet to see on the progression side, such as the game's mercenaries, hireable companions, with Domington seemingly being a friend of Bonkers.
Hold on.
The live server experience for new players is night and day when compared to the hardcore trial by fire that was our experience starting out in the progression server, and one would assume that the live server would be the place to be for new players. However, after talking to the top brass skeezer that is our old mucker Flynn, he explained that due to most players being a much higher level on the live servers, it's the progression servers that are actually far better at getting at such a core part of this MMO during the leveling process, that being able to team up and take on its challenges together.
Like, if you go close and just try, like, oh, yep. That's...
And speaking of the salt of the earth old China, and given that we've only been able to make it to level 11 on this character at least after 28 hours, I think it's only best if we hear a little from him as a veteran of the game, as to what it has to offer players today at the later levels.
As much as Mitch is able to just jump into EverQuest and experience some of the challenge of the game, some of the frustrations of the game and how long it takes and just how weak you actually feel when you're starting the game out, there's a couple things in EverQuest that you just can't get unless you devote a tremendous amount of time in, like I have for almost 20 years. I'm getting really freaking old. Anyway, the things that EverQuest really does well, the things that make it so important and special to so many players that have played it over the years, the hundreds of thousands of players that have loved and enjoyed EverQuest, all tends to be around challenge and difficulty, specifically with PvE. If you think about raids and games like World of Warcraft, those all came from what EverQuest started with. But just imagine that and like blow up the scale. EverQuest raids take longer, and generally they have a lot of the same kind of things where you'll have different kind of telegraphed events, but usually in text form, so you actually have to read. But they do it on such a scale where your average raid size is probably gonna be about 50 people. At times early on in EverQuest, up to 70 people per raid. So if anything, EverQuest is a game that makes raid leaders rethink their life choices on a nightly basis. It is a game that rewards you for putting in time and effort. It's hard to put into words just how satisfying it is to take down that massive raid target with your guild, or take down a group target and get a rare drop, a named rare drop that the whole server knows about and wants, because that's kind of what EverQuest is. It's a game that rewards you for the time that you put in. It just asks for a lot of that time. It is the epitome of a classic MMO, one that is not going to be fun for many people when they first start it, because it's not really meant to be. It's meant to be one of those games that pays off later. There's a reason why people like myself still talk about Everquest so fondly years and years after we started playing, because it really just rewards you. And you can share in that joy and excitement of finally taking down that dragon. This is where I would implore you to give Everquest a chance. You might be surprised just how much fun you can have if you give it enough time. Thank you so much, and Mitch, thank you so much for having me on here.
So should you play Everquest today? In my experience, new players will have to be prepared to adjust to the lack of so many of the quality of life features and refinements that make modern MMORPGs so much more accessible, which is to be expected from a game from the late 90s. And going alone into the progression servers for me was one of the most hardcore MMO experiences I have ever had, so for those with patience could be something to really look into if you want to test yourself in a truly unforgiving environment. Grabbing a friend or two, especially one with some knowledge, will make the new player experience far less infuriating. And after getting a look, the game has a truly insane amount of content for those that stick around, and can get on with its far slower but highly rewarding feeling gameplay. Everquest may not be the top dog today, but after getting a look myself, it was amazing to see just how revolutionary this game was for the time, and just how integral it was to crafting the contemporary experiences we enjoy today. Not only that, but still with such a massive player base for the game's age, it looks like this grandfather of the MMORPG still has quite some life in him yet. Thank you so much for watching. Please drop the video a like if you enjoyed it and let me know your thoughts in the comments, as it truly helps me out. Speaking of that, I want to give a massive thank you to Redbeard Flynn for taking on this classic MMORPG with me. If you're a fan of MMOs and haven't checked out his channel, then you are truly missing out. You can catch all his info down in the description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the channel members who help in supporting the channel. If you're interested in joining as a channel member for all sorts of perks including exclusive videos, the info is also down in the description too. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Shit. Jesus, calm down.
Oh dear lord, what have I done? Standing upon his steed like a Segne, the former being mostly due to his reputation of being slightly less than accurate with his spells for unknown reasons.